What's going on, you guys? Slim here to bring you guys another deck profile from our Pasadena regionals, and this time I got the top 8 MEKK-KNIGHT INVOKED deck profile that my boy DIMITRI piloted. He ended up getting 8th place with this deck. I'm super excited for him because y'all know how much I love this deck. If you guys are new here, consider subscribing. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you guys will be notified where I upload, especially when it comes to all these deck profiles. But yeah, MEKK-KNIGHT INVOKED, you guys, one of my favorite decks of all time. My boy DIMITRI, he piloted this, got top 8. It's amazing. He actually showed me this deck right before the event started, right before round 1, and I was just like, damn, I wish I would have ran this deck. You guys can see this deck is pretty nice. I really like what MEKK-KNIGHT INVOKED has the potential to do this format. I feel that the deck, goes in and out of formats. It's always kind of underrated. People don't give it a second chance, but when this deck connects, this deck really connects, and clearly it did. For those of you that know, the California regionals are insane. It was 10 rounds of Swiss, over 700 players, and yeah, he really did his thing, and I'm super happy for him. He's been doing really well lately, and yeah, this deck is awesome. But yeah, without further ado, we're going to get into it. Just talk about all the monsters, everything. I don't have a tournament report or anything from him, but I do have the list and everything, and I'll just give my opinions as well, so we'll get into it. So, of course, 3 Alistair, one of the namesakes of the deck. This card is amazing. A 1-card engine is insane in Yu-Gi-Oh! The fact that you can just summon this, get your invocation, just get things rolling is nuts. You have to play 3 copies of it. 2 copies of Ash Blossom, standard. You could play 3. I'm pretty sure he just wanted to play 2 because Ash kind of is not that great this format. A lot of decks are able to play around it. A lot of decks are able to chain block it, so Ash Blossom is kind of going down in popularity, but it's still good to have because against rogue decks you really need it. 3 copies of the homie DD Crow. What more can I say? It's the homie DD Crow. Crow is just good. It was really good last format. I think it's really good this format. So many decks rely on their graveyard. There's so many important cards that resolve in the graveyard or need to activate from the graveyard, and Crow just says no to all of that. It's not only the fact that it can hit monsters, it can also hit spells and traps. I've seen plays where people DD Crow, Lunalite, I guess spell and trap cards, they DD Crow the spiral cards, and it just completely messes the player up. So the homie DD Crow is here to stay. Definitely will be one of the best hand traps continuing on in this format. Along with that, we got the 3 copies of Joel and Lockbird. This card is still really good. Spirals is projected to be the best deck. Even though it didn't win our regionals, it's definitely one of the best decks. It did get a top 8 slot, and the deck is insane. The deck is still insane. It still puts up a crazy board. It can play going first or going second. And DD Crow and Joel and Lockbird do really hurt the deck a lot. And Joel is just fantastic against heroes. It's really good against Lunalite. So this card definitely has a lot of synergy against a lot of decks this format. Plus, with this card, you can make Raijin with Invocation, and with DD Crow, you can make Kaliga. So there's already the synergy there when it comes to the elements. So I feel that this format, unfortunately, DD Crow and Joel pretty much are mandatory somewhere in the main deck or side deck, just because of all the decks revolve in the graveyard and try to search and get the cards to hand. So I think both these cards are really important, and you need to play them both in some shape or form in your side or main deck going forward. On to the Mech Knights. 2 copies of Blue Sky, 2 copies of Indigo Eclipse, 3 copies of Purple, and the 1 copy of Yellow Star. So I myself have always played 3 copies of Purple, 2 blue, and I usually only play 1 indigo. I like the fact that he upped the indigo count to 2. This card is really underrated, but it's so good. Everyone makes fun of it for being Shifty Boy, but Shifty Boy is really good. It's basically a free summon. It's always a free summon, and it's always like a free monster because you can just summon it, move it out of the way, and then summon another Mech Knight. And you want to have extra targets for your Blue Sky to resolve. You notice he is playing Pot of Desires in the main deck, so you want to be able to still be able to search cards. So I think this card is going to be one of the best ones you can search. And he did play Yellow Star. Sometimes players play a Red Moon, but I like Yellow Star this format because of all the back row decks. All the back row decks, there's so many. Subterra Guru got 5th place. Altergeist are everywhere. All these decks that play a ton of back row, and this card can just, can bait out in a gate. It's a free summon. It can bait out in a gate, and it can also pop a back row, so this is really important. So I really like the fact that he chose this one even over Red Moon, just to have another Mech Knight name as well for Blue Sky. So really solid Mech Knight lineup. And then the last hand trap is probably one of the best hand traps this format. It's the Gama Driver package. So the beauty of this card, can't be called by the grave. The synergy in this deck is insane. You're able to make Cyframe Lambda, and then you're able to, if you do spin away purple, you are able to search Gamma in the end phase, which is nuts. Having your board set up and then have Gamma to interrupt your opponent is insane too, so I really like that. I think this card is definitely going to be one of the best hand traps going forward. Even if you have the vanilla guy, you have the vanilla guy. It is what it is. The fact that Lambda lets you summon even when you have monsters is nuts. So yeah, so that's it for the monsters. For the spells, we got 3 copies of Instant Fusion. This card is nuts in this deck. You have 3 targets. You you have Raijin, you have Thousand Eyes Restrict, and you have Kaliga. I don't know that many decks that have that many targets, but it's awesome. It gives you a lot of synergy, especially when going second. Being able to use any of those cards is fantastic. Instant Fusion is just a really good extender and helps you, you know, continue on with your plays. So it's definitely a staple in this deck. 3 copies of Invocation. You guys will notice he's also playing the Book of the Law as well as 3 Pot of Desires. You need to play 3 Invocation in the deck when you're playing Desires because you don't want to banish them all. You definitely want to at least search 1 copy. If you banish the other 2, it is what it is. You can keep playing with only 1. So you want to have the 3 copies. I know that it can brick sometimes and you might draw it without Alistair, but remember you can make the Alistair link, and then that monster's name is Alistair the Invoker, so you do have the ability to still have some synergy there. So Invocation, I feel, is a staple 3 of in this deck. And he is playing 3 copies of Lightning Storm, which is really nice in this deck. So Lightning Storm is really cool in this deck because you can do multiple things with it. You can just flat out blow out your opponent with this card, just activate it, blow out all the back row. Okay, they don't have anything. Okay, cool. Proceed to, you know, do what your deck does best. However, you also can set this card in a column, special summon purple, banish purple, get it off the board, and then flip this card. Now, I know that's kind of cheeky, but it also lets you get a monster on the board. It lets you search Blue Sky usually or another Mech Knight, and you blow out your opponent's back row, or you use the Raigeki effect. It could be either one. It really depends, but I think this card is really important in this particular deck because you need a good form of back row removal. Twin Twister used to be the way, but the problem is discarding a card is just not that good, and Lightning Storm just takes care of that problem. So I really like this card in this deck. The fact that it's a normal spell too helps so much, so you can just set it, set a column, and do things. So I really like that he played this in the deck. It's necessary, this format. 3 copies of Magical Meltdown. You need more copies of Alistair. 2 copies of Mind Control. Cards at 2. Cards insane. You go second. You need to play this card. So I'm a big fan of Mind Control. I always have been. It's one of my favorite spell cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it just helps break boards, helps bait negates. And when you do that, that's how you win. So it's fantastic. And he played 3 copies of Desires. Now I know a lot of people are going to bat an eye and say, why would you play 3? You want to draw, you guys. You want to see your cards. And I know there's the risk of maybe drawing another 2 Desires, but it's very rare statistically that'll happen. You need to be able to, you know, search all your stuff out. That's why there's a lot of 3-ofs in this deck. And Desires just helps you draw those extra cards. Drawing extra hand traps when backed up with Macabre and stuff like that is fantastic. So I feel that Desires is definitely a staple in this deck. And then the 1 copy of Terraforming is you need extra copies of Alistair, and the 1 Book of the Law. So the Book of the Law is something I personally haven't ran in a while, but I can see why he ran it. The OTK potential. The OTK potential to literally resolve this, summon Mega Lancia or any of the other Mech Knights and OTK your opponent is insane. The way that its synergy works with Alistair the Mad Invoker is nuts, and I definitely give you kudos, Dimitri, for playing this card because a lot of players kind of cut this card, but this card does give you an OTK win button that a lot of decks don't see coming. There's a lot of decks in the format that do play brick cards, they do play quote-unquote garnets, and this can be a garnet by itself, but when this card works, and it can be an OTK that you might not have had before. So I can see why he played this card, and it's really cool. So yeah, so that's it for his main deck. His side deck real quick, he's got the 3 copies of Gamma Seal. I love Gamma Seal. This format doesn't take away from your normal summon, literally can you know, crack the sleeper, and then you can mind control the Appaloosa, you can break their whole board, you can mind control whatever, you can Gamma Seal any problematic card, and it's fantastic. It starts to break your opponent's board. Really good against random decks too, like really good against Rogue. Just taking away any monster that might get in your way is fantastic. Card's only 2200, so pretty much any of your main guys can beat over it, so it's fantastic. 2 copies of Twin Twister. It goes with the Lightning Storms. It's for all the back row decks. There's a ton of back row decks. Like I said, Guru Control got 5th place. Altergeist is everywhere. There's so many back row decks that we're going to see this format that you need to be able to be, you need to have extra answers to back row decks this format for sure. 3 copies of Evenly, because not only is it good against all the back row decks and stun decks, it's really good against Spiral, really good at build-a-board decks. It baits a negate, and if you bait the negate with something else and then you evenly them, their whole board is gone, and then you just proceed to play, and then they can't come back. So it's pretty crazy. I love the fact that he also played the 1 red reboot. So this card is completely unsearchable, but if you draw it, it's game. If you draw it, it's game, usually against trap decks. You start doing your OTK, they try to stop you, you activate this, cards go back down, they set another trap, but you OTK him that turn, so it's irrelevant. So I love the fact he's still playing this. I know a lot of players are still, you know, choosing to play the 1 red reboot, because if you can OTK your opponent, this is the best button, the best win button you can have against a trap deck, is just stop them from doing everything and then just OTK them. So I really like the fact that he played this in the side deck. And then when he's going first, because this is a going second deck, he sides 3 copies of Summon Limit and 3 copies of There Can Only Be One. Both of these cards are insane. Summon Limit is fantastic for the fact that, you know, it's really good against any deck that tries to really overextend. They can only summon twice. Purple Nightfall gets around this because it just spins away and then just returns to the field, so it doesn't count to your summons later on in the game. So I really like this card, and you can play with just 1 to 2 summons. So Summon Limit is fantastic. And There Can Only Be One. You got Psychics, you got Spell cards, you got all different types, so you don't really feel any of that those issues when playing this card. And this This card is a complete blowout against Salad and decks that really need to have extra monsters on the board. So both of these cards are fantastic when going first, and I really like how he approached the side deck with his deck. And then just on to the extra deck real quick, the 1 copy of Kaliga. This card is so underrated but so fantastic. Both players can only attack with 1 monster. You can only use 1 monster effect. That's crazy. This card is nuts. It's also an instant fusion target, so that is ridiculous. This card is fantastic. You can make it with the homie DD Crow or any other dark monsters your opponent plays. Get them out of the graveyard, and then they have no synergy there anymore. The 1 copy of Mega Lancia, because it's your OTK enabler with Book of the Law. The 2 copies of Makaba, standard. 1 copy of Purgatrio, because you only play 1 when you're OTKing your opponent. 1 copy of Raijin, instant fusion target, can use it with Joel and Lockbird, can use its effect, which is cool. When you have Meltdown on the board, your opponent can't respond, so that's fantastic. The 1 copy of Thousand Eyes Restrict, because it's one of the best instant fusion targets going second. You know, take a monster, link it off, it's crazy. And then the 1 copy of the Mad Invoker. Card is the OTK enabler, best link in the deck. It just makes everything happen, so it's fantastic. 1 copy of Boral Sword, because it's game. You can make it so easily in this deck, so you just OTK your opponent with a Mech Knight and whatnot, and it's game. Got the 1 copy of Gravity Controller. This card is really cool. Just being able to get monsters off the board, being able to spin a monster back to the deck is fantastic. I really like this card. I think this card is one of the most underrated cards out of the last set. It's just a common, but it's fantastic. You should definitely be looking at Gravity Controller in a deck like MEKK-KNIGHT Invoked. 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, 1 copy of Unicorn. Those are standard. The 1 Lambda, because it goes with the side frames and very easy to make. The 1 Almirage and the 1 Secure Gardener, for when you go first, you need to turn Alistair into something. You can make that Almirage into a Secure Gardener, and there you go. You get a free Makaba, so it's pretty nice. But yeah, that is the deck, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to give the video a like. Let me know what you guys think of MEKK-KNIGHT Invoked this format. I think the deck's going to be fantastic. I think it has a lot of potential, and I can't wait to see what it does going forward in the format. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.